Hi all, welcome to my channel again. So today we are going to discuss about the Docker interview questions. And in this session, I'm going to explain you all about what questions might get asked in the interviews and how to answer them. So everything I'm going to discuss in this session, and also we can discuss some real-time scenarios which might get asked in the interviews. So this is just a part 1 and part 2 I will be releasing after this, so please do watch. If you want to check out this blog, you can check out that from this link which I will be mentioning in the description box. And let's start now. What is the difference between an image container and engine? So image is nothing but a read only package, so it is just prerequisite for creating a container. So without image we can't create a container. When we run the image, then only a container will get created. So basically it will be having all the necessary dependencies and commands that can execute to run an application. So when we run that image, a container will get created. So basically the container has the ability to package the application that has its own network mounts and OS that can run anywhere, anytime, and as many times as we want in any system. So that is basically a container, which is nothing but an application which has everything by its own. So engine is an open source containerization for building and containerization, and this is it enables you to separate your applications from the infrastructure, which will help you to deliver faster. So basically that is about the image container and the engine. So this might get asked. So the next question is, what is the difference between the commands copy and add? So these are the commands which we use in the Docker file. Copy and add. So these are the commands which we use in the Docker file. So the both commands use it to add a specific file from one location to another. So copy command, which will what it will do, it will copy the source code of the application from its original location to the specified path. So basically, for whatever the source code we are building the application, that will get copied from its original location to the specified path using the copy command in the Docker file. And add, it has the same functionality as copy command but supports file compression and URL sources. So if you are using any URLs or any file compression, then we can use the add in the Docker file. So the more secure way is copy command because it is widely used. So if they ask for the difference, you can tell them this in the interviews. And what is the difference between the Docker command cmd versus run? Run executes when we build the image. That means the command passed to run executes on top of the current image in a new layer. So basically when we are building the image, before mentioning the Docker command in the Docker file, we keep run in front of that. So cmd is nothing but a startup command. So with cmd instruction, we can specify a default command that executes when the container is starting. So cmd is a startup command which will run when a container is starting, and the run is when we are building the image. We use run when we are building the image. So this is the difference between these two commands. You can say if they asked in the interviews, and how will you reduce the size of the Docker image? So this will definitely get asked. So when they ask you this question, you can just simply say that. So why this question? First, you need to understand why reducing of the size of the Docker image in our application. So when building a Docker image, we want to keep it lightweight. So because avoiding the larger image sizes will speed up the build and deployment of containers, and hence it is critical to reduce the image size of images to a minimum. Okay, as we want to keep the Docker image a lightweight because build and deployment will depend on this. The smaller the Docker image is, the speed of the build and deployment increases. So here are some basic steps recommended to follow. So these are the steps which you can tell in the interview if the question is get asked. Then if you want to keep create a smaller and more efficient Docker images, then we must follow these steps. First, we need to use a smaller base image. So before writing a Docker file, we first declare a base image. So that image needs to be smaller, and try to minimize the number of layers to install the packages in the Docker file. So every line which we write in the Docker file will create a layer. So try to minimize the number of lines in the Docker file, so that will minimize the number of layers which are being created, and which will reduce the time. So utilize the multi-stage builds feature in Docker. So in Docker we have one feature which is a multi-stage builds. Using that also we can reduce the size of the Docker. Be aware of updates and unnecessary packages and dependencies. So these are the 4 basic things which you need to keep track of if you want to reduce the size of the Docker image. So these are the answers you can tell in the interview if this question gets asked. Why and when to use the Docker? So why Docker is getting used? So Docker, what it will do, it will containerize our application that can be run in any system with any configuration at any time. So when to use the Docker? So if there are 2 developers, example, so they have designed a build and one of them want to transfer that version of application to the teammate, but the other teammate cannot run the same code in the system because of the dependencies of their systems. So the only way to overcome the situation is by using containers, which can be achieved by the Docker. Because of this reason we can use the Docker. So next question is explain the Docker components and how they interact with each other. This one I have already discussed in the previous session. If you have watched, then you can answer this question very easily. So Docker is divided into 3 parts: client, Docker host, and registry. Client will be us, where we are running the commands in the terminal like Docker build, Docker pull, Docker run. So this will get interacted with the Docker daemon under the Docker host, which will transfer our commands to the respective images or containers or the registry. So if you are doing Docker pull, then it will go directly to the registry, and then it will pull and it will fetch those details. Similarly, like Docker run will go to the images, then creates a container. So like that, Docker daemon serves as a mediator between the client, host, and registry. So these are all the things which I have explained in the previous session. If you watch those videos, then you can answer this question very easily. So please go back and watch those videos. So explain the terminology: Docker compose, Docker file, Docker image, Docker container. So you need to know the difference between all of this. So let me explain you Docker compose. Docker compose is a tool that is developed to help define and share multi-container applications. If you want to create multiple containers at a time, or if you want to stop multiple containers at a time, basically to manage multiple containers at a time, we use the Docker Compose. So normally we write a YAML file which will be having all the images, specific requirements, and it will be placed inside this Docker Compose YAML, and we run the Docker Compose commands to execute all of these images under this YAML file at a time. So we can bring all of this, we can run all of this at the same time, we can keep it down all of this at the same time. So using the Docker Compose multi-container, we can manage multi-container applications. Next is the Docker file. It is just a simple text file with a set of commands or instructions. So these are executed to perform actions on the base image to create a new Docker image. Normally Docker file is used to create a Docker image which will be having the commands like base image and the dependencies need to install, from where the source code is being taken, everything which are required to create an image, a Docker file will be having. Docker image is a read only, which I have already explained above about the Docker image and the Docker container, so I will not be repeating here. So in what real scenarios have you used the Docker? This is the real scenario questions which might get asked in the interview. So you need to answer like this, like I have used Docker to containerize an Nginx application. So basically a Docker file which is having the base image, the source code, and the installations which are required, everything are in the Docker file, which are with all its dependencies, thus resulting in building a Docker container. So once the Docker image is created, using that image we can build the container. So after building the container, the image will get pushed to the remote repository and can be pulled at any time to run on the system, and this reduces the time of the building the application every time for the project. So this, like this, you can answer when this question get asked, because this is the actual process using the Docker, how we build the application, how we store the Docker images into the Docker hub, everything. And whenever we want, we will pull those images from the Docker hub. So like this, how it works by using the Docker. So like this, if you get asked questions in the interviews, you can answer like this. So if you want to check out this blog, you can check that from this description box. Check this link from the description box, and thanks for watching my video until the end. Please do watch the next section, which is having the part 2 of the interview questions. Thanks for watching.